what is it that we talk about when we talk about Hamlet? And I'm borrowing a question in this form as it was presented by Carver, the inventor or love child of postmodernism, so something much closer to us than Shakespeare and Hamlet itself. But the question that Carver was posing is, what do we talk about when we talk about love? And he was posing a question, questioning what it is that we think when we're talking about love, what it is that we have been told to think, what it is that we imagine, what it is that it is being given to us as an age-old concept, as something that is a heritage, might be heavy, and we want to change it, and we don't recognize it anymore as relevant, that is love. So let's apply the same to Hamlet. What is it that we talk about when we talk about Hamlet? We all have these preconceived ideas because we have studied it, we have read it, we have heard about it, the work, or him, the character, very much alive in our culture. You have to imagine that, for example, the work, Hamlet, the play, is part of the curriculum in pretty much the whole world. In China, it's part of the curriculum in every school. In China. Here in the United States, it's not mandatory, but usually in the period of K-12, it is taught, Shakespeare is taught, as you might know, usually, in this progression, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Hamlet. So in a progression that requires more and more adulthood on the audience. So more and more ability to handle difficult and tragic situations, as if two murderers, psychopaths, like the Macbeth couple, that kidnap and slaughter two young children, are actually better and more easy to handle than a teenager kind of depressed. So that's actually what Hamlet is for many people in their minds, even though Shakespeare does not clarify. Scholars think that Hamlet might be something between 16 and 30. So kind of a large age group. But we tend to identify Hamlet with a late teenager. We know that he is a college dropout, so he doesn't want to go back to school, maybe college, maybe it's Denmark in the Middle Ages, who knows. Anyways, what is it that we talk about? Do we talk about a teenager when we talk about Hamlet? Yes. Well, we can talk about a teenager. And why do we talk about Hamlet? And why am I here now talking about Hamlet? I've been looking around the web in websites like eNotes or debate.org, or all of these websites where actually students like you go and look for information. And very often there's this question, why do I have to study Shakespeare? And many of the questions add these kind of comments. It's not relevant. Shakespeare is obsolete. I don't understand it. When will I use it in real life? Which is an argument that I myself used when I was little for math. When will I use it actually, right? Complex math. Well, all these things we actually do, not only we use them in real life, but let me tell you why Hamlet is specifically relevant, and is relevant to you, who are the generation to which we are giving our future. You are not just our future, we are giving it to you. So what you do with it, it's up to you. And if you want to include the past, it's up to you. But I'm here to tell you why it is a good thing. Hamlet, in many ways, it is the best possible way to confront your everyday problems. Hamlet had a huge problem with his mother, with the death of his father, with his uncle, with his relatives. He had problems with his friends. He ends up killing everybody. But all the energy that he actually uses throughout the whole play, it is encapsulated in the most important moment, and for obvious reason, the most iconic and the most famous, which is the monologue, the soliloquy, the to be or not to be. So why is that important, and why is it important to you in particular? Because he is asking questions to himself, and by and large to all of us. He's asking whether it's better to be or not to be. But what does it mean, actually? Well, he tries to clarify it to himself, and he says, okay, is it better to be awake, or is it better to be asleep? Okay, so is it better to sleep, or is it better to dream? Well, what is he actually doing? On the one hand, he is creating what, centuries later, we will come to understand as the division between consciousness, unconsciousness, and subconsciousness. We gave it those names, Shakespeare didn't. But that's really something that comes from there, if you want to find it there. And one very important lesson for inquiring minds is that whereas we live in a very scientific age, I mean, the humanities have ruled the world for the first part of the millennia. We are now in the second part, where the sciences have started ruling. But there's a very crucial difference between the two of them, and it is into the soliloquy of Hamlet. Hamlet does not answer the question. So it is important to ask questions. It's important to look for answers, which is what science does. But art, poetry, the humanities in general, are not interested in the answers. They are interested in the beauty of the question and in the quest that we actually go through after we hear a question that we pose ourselves or that it is posed to ourselves. So, as you see, Hamlet throughout the century has been represented and has been interpreted in many different ways because it is relevant. It is relevant even though, you might say, his Wikipedia page is shorter than the one of another character, Harry Potter. So, Harry Potter is more relevant, right? He's more famous. Like, you know, I've read on the internet some fan of another Harry, which I think is Styles, the singer, right? And she claimed, many of these girls claimed that, well, you know, Harry Styles and the One Direction are more relevant and more famous than the Beatles because they sold more copies, because they are known by more people, because they are cheered for by more people. So if we want to start defining relevance in the world and quality through quantity, so if we want to decide which is best by the token of what it is most cheered for and that impacts more people, we have to see that the best form of government is Chinese communism, right? But we don't want to assume that because it is incorrect. So the thing is that there is a problem, and I was happy that there was a section on language here, because also for Shakespeare, language is very important. There's a question of language here. It's not that Harry Potter is more famous than Hamlet, because Harry Potter is celebrated. Hamlet is famous. Hamlet is relevant. Hamlet is something that exists throughout the century as a symbol of humanity, whereas Harry Potter and many other interesting, let's say, phenomena appear throughout history here and there and are celebrated. They can be really, really celebrated, but this doesn't mean that they represent something really enduring. speaking to the depth of humanity. So this goth emo version, for example, of Hamlet comes from the beginning of the 20th century. So what is actually that we are doing? So what it is that we talk about when we talk about the Global Hamlet. So the Global Hamlet is an attempt of creating, of all of you and all of the people that exist in the world and uses the internet in a good or in a bad way. We heard today so many things, but that participate on the internet as users, as they are called, in a passive way. A user is something that receives something. We is someone that receives something. We want to turn them into authors. So the opportunity that we are offering is to comment, to do annotations in video form, image, music, singing, in reading versions of Hamlet. You will have the possibility, these are our partners, you will have the possibility of commenting verse by verse, including anything that you find relevant. Because what is the end product? The end product will be the portrait of Hamlet today. Every period has been representing Hamlet in theater and in literary form, in scholarly form, depending on the very phase that that period had. Was it a revolutionary period? Was it, in a revolutionary period, teenagers and 20 years olds are the strongest and most important force of society. Whereas in periods of restoration or in periods where there is oligarchy or other forms of government, the young generation is not as important, right? So the reading of Hamlet has changed because Hamlet seems to be like this form of papers that you can look through the sun and reveal the image. So if you look it through the sun of time, every different period, it will reveal a different image. We want to know what is today's Hamlet. And you are the only people who can actually say that, or the most qualified. How does it work? There will be an app for Facebook, an app for Twitter. You can actually access it in many, many different ways. You will have different sections. There will be critique, pinacoteca, genealogy, theater. You will discover that actually Hamlet is not an original story. It comes from Livy, from the Latin, from a Latin story, and perhaps even before that. And after Shakespeare has been told many, many times, Hamlet himself, the Lion King is actually a version of Hamlet. I don't know if you knew that, but it was. There's a Schwarzenegger movie where he plays a small part. Plays Hamlet, to be or not to be, and he blows up everything and says not to be. I don't know if you saw that. It's a lot of fun. So in the Pinacoteca, for example, we will include all of the images that are part of the typical imagery that was created around Hamlet, but we want to put also original work from artists. New production. Just like in the theater, we have many theater programs that are connected with us and actual theater companies. And so we will also stream their representation when they will be performing it, but even when they will be, trying it and having one scene or another scene, and you can comment on that and you can influence the way that that play will be eventually performed. Another thing that I just wanted to add to you is that it might be interested, the whole idea is to create a reader, author, encyclopedia that is a collective encyclopedia of many, many texts Hamlet is the first, and it's the first because I was trying to explain to you our modern consciousness was created when Hamlet was written, because it is the one single work that has really embodied in a perfect way, or with a, let's say, most convincing language, what it is to be a modern man, right? A man that asks questions and has no answers, a man that doubts, a man that doesn't know. But after Hamlet, we will go on and explore many other works, and we would really like also to have people suggest what they would like to have. This is also a way to resurrect somehow the idea of scholarship not as something boring. So Hamlet is not the irrelevant, obsolete, and boring. Hamlet is someone that really said, hey, I am the king of the infinite space, and I could be the king of infinite space were it not that I have bad dreams. So come on, tell me, who does not relate to that? Thank you.